Doing some last minute pruning?
Oh yeah, there's always pruning. That's what we're doing around here.
This episode is brought to you by my new podcast, Bad Seeds. The phrase black market evokes sinister images. Stacks of AK-47s, crates of cocaine. But potted succulents on a windowsill? No one is calling Crime Stoppers for that. But maybe you should. Because the biggest black market you've never heard of might be blooming right under your nose.
This plant could sell for between $10,000 and $15,000 on the open market.
And where there's big money, there are bigger risks.
We were just tied up with what looked like garden string behind our backs, and these big M16s stuck to our heads.
I'm Summer Rayne Oakes. I'm a plant expert and author. On the Bad Seeds podcast, we plunge straight into the underworld of plant crime. From Mexican drug cartels to corrupt elected officials, we explore how the black market for plants has repercussions for you, me, and the fate of the planet. Listen to Bad Seeds on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
But we're way out in the lowlands now at Fairchild because we have the uplands and a natural drop-off, and the lowlands go right out into the mangroves. So we're sort of getting a little more salt, and we're getting into a really interesting group of palms. It's Nypa, N-Y-P-A. It's only one species, and it's actually its own subfamily. There's always a little argument, but it's one of the earliest lineages in the family. So it's its own subfamily, Nypoideae out of 5. And it is the mangrove palm. So it now really occurs in Malaysia. And one reason I want to come out here and look at it does some bizarre things. And we also have the first time we've set fruit in quite a while. So these are the old spent, these are male flowers. But this is a female flower that's developing and hopefully will open soon. They typically germinate after they fall, but some mangroves don't. It's very solid, takes a while to get going.
Super solid. It almost looked a little squishy, but from far away, but it's not.
It's not, and hopefully it develops. We haven't had fruit in a long time because we've had pretty warm years. That's kind of the theory. But you can see the palm, it grows into the kind of mangrove habitat. It actually divides on the tip. So these are not side branches. It has true dichotomous branching. And when the leaves kind of come off, they dry to a point, and they naturally begin to break at different heights. And it's even thought these are kind of like snorkels almost. It keeps air going through its roots, which is a little different from other groups. But it's been known a long time, and actually this is known from the fossil record in England, which is sort of fun. So it's a really old group. That's the Eocene, about 50 million years ago, when the whole planet was really warm, and this was a dominant plant in England, but now only Indo-Malaysian. But we have some out here in fruit, which I thought would be kind of fun to look at, see how it's doing.
I mean, I just always think about that. I mean, I'm from northeastern Pennsylvania, and back in the day, the Devonian period, the Carboniferous period.
You're going way back there because you got the coal mines. So Eocene, not as far. I think the Eocene, of kind of like Green River, Wyoming, where you have all those nice Sableides, the sable fossils, which is now like state tree of Florida, but was growing all the way up in Wyoming 50 million years ago when it was warm. This is actually not a very large plant. Partially is the cold, partially also we just don't have good muck and a really good flat. This is in man-made lakes, so it drops off very quickly. But in habitat, they can get over 30 feet tall easily.
Fascinating. When would you collect the fruit?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm just going to keep watching it and see when it does, and hopefully it'll just start to break apart. Again, they typically do germinate after they come apart, but a lot of mangroves are viviparous, and you'll actually see them germinate on the plant.
Wow.
We got to wait and see. We haven't had a fruit set in probably 10 years, so hopefully we get some to grow. Just kind of thought it would be worth taking a peek out here in the lowlands at one of our Corypha. So this is a group of palms. This is Corypha utan, and it's one of these palms that grows and flowers once and then dies. And so this has been growing here. It looks like it was 1979 it was planted, so 43 or so. And it flowered last year. It takes about a year for it to begin to really produce seeds. You can see we're just carpet of seed. We've collected some. And it doesn't happen all the time. It would look more like this. This is the same species. And then it'll just begin to flower, so keep an eye on this one. It'll probably happen soon. But they can prove, maybe. I've heard stories of the counts, but I think maybe in the hundreds of thousands. I don't think they get up to orchid levels.
Do you want to show some of the seeds on the ground?
Yeah, we can see what's going on here. Again, we collected some. A lot are not going to germinate. Some are still dropping. And this is one. It's a
yummy.
Perfectly good seed in there. Our parrots, our macaws that live around the garden like to eat a lot of these things. But this is a perfectly good seed. They do need some cleaning a lot, or they don't get on the ground, they won't germinate well.
Right.
But
so you have to clean out all the pectinous goo around it.
Yeah, you clean it off, and this is good to go. I don't think this is one that needs cracking.
Yeah.
But let's see, we'll have a bunch popping up. Doesn't disperse well here, so this is where, if you think about an invasive, probably not going to happen.
Not even with the birds eating them?
You need a bird that can swallow this whole. If there's something like a parrot, it's going to predate it. It's going to actually crack it open and eat that nut. So we start thinking about what disperses our plants. But anyway, sort of just happens once.
Yeah, thanks for showing us that.
So anyway, sort of way out in the lowlands now. And beyond this is mangroves right to the bay. But here we still got a little bit of land. They can definitely handle some salts and inundation. And this is in the genus Copernicia. So this is a palm. But it's really fun to look because it's just such an oddball species.
Yeah, it's like vase-shaped.
It's like vase-shaped, and it does get taller and grow up. And Copernicia most species are from Cuba. There's a couple of others that make it to South America and Hispaniola. But really, most of the diversity is here. This is an unusual species, it's Copernicia Rigida, which to me, I at least want to point out because it just has such an alien feel compared to most palms.
Now, is this something that's really characteristic to a lot of palms? You'll start to see some,
What's up?
Is this something characteristic that you'd see with a lot of palms, like the real dead or dying leaves?
Yeah, so there's different groups of palms. Some will like hold the leaves for a long time. Some things are called self-cleaning if they have a large leaf sheath. What I was going to show with this one, is that it has, it's hard to show here. Let's see if I got another leaf. It's almost like a ligule or a hastula. This is still part of the leaf, and you can see it has this growth above on the inside of the leaf. This is one of the largest ones I've ever seen in palms. It's almost like a hastula that's developed into a ligule. So an odd growth habit. This particular one has a little bit more, if you notice, a bluish look. Some of these older ones that are taller are greener. And that's actually a different locality. This is from near the town of Moa in eastern Cuba.
Interesting.
With these very long inflorescences that reach far beyond the leaves.
Yeah, I see it. It kind of looks like, like something came out of like a party trick or something. It just like sprayed out.
We've actually been working with some people that do a lot of floral arrangements, and this is a popular item to use.
Yeah.
But fairly slow growing and hard, something you just don't see outside of more tropical climates is these at this size. Tough to grow that at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, we're in the South Palmetto. And this is just really a spectacular palm. I think it's worth pointing out and seeing, if nothing else, simply for its size. And this is Tahina. The genus only has one species, Tahina spectabile. And it actually was recently discovered, maybe 15 years ago. In northern Madagascar. There's about 100 plants left. And I had a story of people photographing it. People didn't really know what it was. It got sent around until finally, Kew Botanical Gardens gets contacted, and it turns to be a whole new genus. And basically, it's a massive palm. I get 50 feet tall. The leaves can get 25 feet long. And again, much like the Corypha utan, at a certain point it flowers, and that's it. It flowers and dies. But unlike it, it's not related to Corypha very closely. It's in a very different tribe. This one's got that nice kind of silver color. What it also shows is what it means by a healed palm. It's sometimes even called kind of a saxophone growth habit. So right here, this plant started as a small seed, and it grew and grew down into the ground. So this is when it was just had a few little leaves and starts to get going. You can see it kind of digs itself down before it comes up. This is an establishment growth. And this is where palms don't thicken like a typical, if you think of like a dicot tree, like an oak tree, it thickens, it has vascular cambium, they don't. So it has to have a way from its adventitious roots to thicken. So it digs down to the ground so it can thicken low and then it can come up. So this is now starting to go up and hopefully it'll just keep flying up and get large.
Yeah, because right now it's kind of stout and, round shaped, for the canopy.
Right, they're kind of a teenager. They can be actually some of the largest times a palm is right before it starts going up, and as it gets taller and taller, the leaves will get smaller. Again, because it doesn't have that vascular cambium, that's sort of typical. But odd, because in the group it's in, its tribe, it's the only one that flowers once and dies. And it's related to the only palm that occurs in Pakistan and Afghanistan. It's related to the elephant palm of southern Thailand. So this is curious group of palms, but it's growing fast and getting large.
The leaves are huge.
Seeds. I don't think anyone's ever produced seed yet in cultivation. So this actually is wild collected seed from Madagascar from Q's release. And I think around 2008 is when that happened. So 2008, a little over 10 years, it's doing a pretty good clip.
Yeah.
And hopefully get it to flower soon.
Light flares on fleek. Looks so good.
It's a little dense in here. I mean, we have other ones that show it more. So here, this is a really dramatic palm. It's easily recognized for this really characteristic spiny trunk.
Yikes.
And palms have made spines many different ways. Sometimes they can just come right off the skin. They can be on the petiole. There's even a lot of palms that'll have spines that are actually roots. They're adventitious roots coming out of the trunk. But in this case, it's actually the leaf sheath. So we think about where the leaf inserts. If we actually look where the leaves insert into the plant, it was right here. Mm-hmm. And this is the sheath around the rest of it, which kind of makes this back pointing.
Look, it just looks like basket weaving, doesn't it?
It looks like weaving,
Crazy.
but nothing's actually woven.
No.
It's actually all layers.
Wow.
So nothing actually goes up and through because of its development.
Another thing that it kind of looks like is those coconut fiber pots that you sometimes can grow in horticulture tray.
Right. And so this patterning is typical of a lot of it in this tribe. Like a lot of the Cocothrynax have beautiful layering. But this is the only one that has those kind of spines shooting back. So it's not a very common plant in the wild, kind of the North, Dominican Republic and Haiti. But it does really well here. It's just very slow.
You don't always think of palms as pollinator plants, you know what I mean? At least not where I'm from.
Yeah. Well, here you can see they have a lot of generalists, a lot of bees, a lot of nectar, and a lot of seeds. So a lot of action with palms. All right, so we're walking over. We're actually really close to that Tahina, and this is one of its relatives. And I was saying it's in this bizarre tribe where you have this massive palm, northern Madagascar, flowers once, but lo and behold, molecular data, a lot of cryptic morphological characters, is closely related to Caridoxa. And this is one species, Caridoxa elegans, really from kind of the southern Thailand into kind of the Malay Peninsula area.
I love the black. Are those considered petioles?
Yes.
Oh, it's so nice, the
so
black
it's nice,
petioles.
dark, and it has a real, actually not too far from the Tahina, it's almost got a similar texture, but it's got the nice glaucous undersides, just give it a silver. But this palm, rather than flowering once and dying, will flower over the years. But in this case, it's dioecious rather than monoecious. So this is actually a staminate plant. You kind of think that as like a male. And it's just coming to bloom. And you can see when I tap it,
yeah, all the pollen.
We're getting pollen off. So what I'm thinking, if this is in bloom, they generally are pretty well timed out. So I'm gonna just take some with us and hopefully we can find a female that's in bloom and actually get it pollinated. That does work. I just throw them on top and
play some sexy music and
just let them do their thing. But you can just see how much pollen comes off of these.
What do we have here in this little enclave?
So where we are, we're kind of in the western palmatum. And I've mentioned a lot of Caribbean, and this is still a lot of Caribbean palms in here. A lot of these are kind of different species of Cocothrinax, relative to Zambia. And we can see we kind of Crenita, sometimes called old man palm with a very woolly trunk.
I like that. I like that feature of that palm.
Some of these are older, so different Cocothrinax. But one thing I think worth checking out here is that we've started doing a lot more with orchids at Fairchild. So we've been calling it, it's really spawned off of an exterior project called the Million Orchid Project, which was done through high schools, public places, to bring a lot of our native orchids back into Fairchild. But in the garden, we've started going with a national orchid garden, both native but different types of orchids. Obviously, we have some of the Vanda hybrids in certain areas, but in some of our more plots in the palmatum, we really want to focus more on species or different types of hybrids that were from the Caribbean. And so while we had all these great palms, we figured let's start putting orchids up. And we actually keep track of what type of orchids we have growing by the tags on the palms.
Oh, interesting.
So we try to keep one species or one hybrid per palm. I know some of these are very clearly species. This one's actually an intergeneric hybrid. So this is a Browtonia crossed with the Cattleya. Browtonia is very much Caribbean group, but crossing Cattleya can cause a lot of larger flowers. We want to see how they grow. And it really gives you a feel of what it feels like in habitat. So rather than having things in pots or hanging, we're trying to go with a more naturalistic feel and really just getting these root growth in the palms exactly how I've seen them in habitat on Cocothrinax. So when you go through here, you can see different kinds, and they flower different times of the year. Obviously now is January, it's not prime time, but I think that's one reason some of these intergeneric hybrids can really perform well. You get that F1 vigor, that hybrid vigor going, and so it's a good place to test out those while we grow the wild type species as well.
Right, so the Million Orchid Project, does the cultivar, the hybrid, is that included in the Million Orchid Project, or is it kind of outside?
That would be outside. So
Okay.
the actual Million Orchid, what we've been doing, and this is really, Dr. Jason Downing has really been part of the foundation in making it happen across Miami. It really focused on 5 native orchids, which we can see in other parts of the garden. The Encyclia tampensis or Podium potatum, and it's blown up to where you can see them on Lincoln Road or Miracle Mile and Coral Gables. And simply Lincoln Road, they also did want to do some exotic hybrids, which is fine. But a lot of the stuff in the schools and all these places are the native ones. This is really more, as it's called, like Fairchild's collection, the National Orchid Garden. And at least in this plot, we're focusing on the Caribbean Encyclias and Browtonias and hybrids thereof to see how we can grow and keep them going.
Well, this is just one way to get more surface area of planting, right? Thank God for the
it's
epiphytes
detailing.
and hemiepiphytes, you know?
Yeah, it was a ton of wasted space, and now we're just kind of taking our time collecting and growing these plants.
Exactly.
So as we kind of keep with our theme of National Orchid Garden, in the palmatum, we've been doing different groups of orchids on palm trees, ones that we think will really thrive with very minimal maintenance. And here we're actually looking at Abrazavola. This is Abrazavola nodosa. Has a great fragrance at night. So it's, again, when you see that large tubular white flowers, you often get that with moth pollination.
Yeah,
so it has a wonderful scent.
It's flowering during the day though, so does this flower for multiple days? Is
Yes,
that what
these
the deal
flowers
is?
will last many days. They're long lasting, but they only smell at night. And even with our cold weather, you can see in the full sun, we start getting a little color to the leaves. That's
Right.
not a problem at all. That's just totally natural what they do. And hardy. So when we have certain palms like this, we want to cross an orchid. What makes the concept of things like Million Orchids so interesting is how easy it is to produce lots of seed. So in one pollination event, when we look at this one, maybe you might get tens of thousands of seed, but some of them with Serta Podium, you can get 3 million seed in one pollination.
Wow.
So we grow those up aseptically, you can mass produce them. What's also crazy to think about when you have something like Serta Podium, it's not each piece of pollen, it's called a pollinia. So it is specialized pollinator, gets a packet of pollen, lands in the flower, but each one of those seeds has to be pollinated. So you look at a Serta Podium, that pollinia has 3 million genetic copies. And you can see a bee with multiple pollinia stuck on it. It's been going to flowers with literally a billion genetic copies.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've seen that, and the flies are like, oh my God, I feel a little unstable.
A little unstable,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a billion genetic copies. So when we
Yeah.
started thinking like it's very different from a rhinoceros, where it's very hard to bring that fecundity up. With the orchids, you can absolutely blow them up. A lot of numbers when it comes to orchids. And if you think of Cymbidium in the wild, let's say Cymbidium punctatum, that plant may produce hundreds of pods throughout its lifetime. Now with a million seed per each one, we're talking billions. But in a steady state of ecology, you'd only expect one mature individual to produce a mature individual. So that selection is 1 in billions for the next mature individual. And you can kind of see how evolution can turn very quickly and why it's such a large family and so specialized with insects. It's not often you get a lot of colors in palms, since it's always very much cherished in the garden. And Serta Stack is a well-known genus. It has the sealing wax palm with a bright red leaf sheath. The problem is they tend to like really warm, humid weather year-round. They love bright light, but not scalding light. So we do them very well in our rare plant house. They look great. They're a street tree in Borneo. It's like overcast every day. It's warm and raining. So this is actually a hybrid of Renda, likely with elegans. And this is a seed we had gotten a while back out of Thailand with Nong Nuc Botanical Gardens. And so there are some differences among them, but they have that real vigor, and they are much more cold tolerant. And so we just had a cold weather spell, and it's doing fine. And I found that it does much better in our hot, dry period. One thing I'd mention about our hot, dry period, we're basically at a desert latitude. So we're the same as the Chihuahuan Desert in Mexico, we're the same as the Sahara, Saudi Arabia. We're just not a desert because we're this little peninsula reaching out into this warm Gulf Stream rising out of the Caribbean. So we have extra rain. But our dry season, it can really be cloudless and fry. People don't realize that in Miami. April, May can be very hot, but this has been very fine with that. So again, there's something to be said for hybrids when we think about gardening and what you can get away with. So yeah, it's been here maybe 3 years, and it's starting to finally lift off, and it should be fun.
It's almost reminiscent of, bamboo stalks when you see them this way.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously not with the palm leaves around, but.
Yeah, and it's true. Actually, this is still the leaf sheath. So we've kind of pruned this a little so you can get walk by. So you actually don't even get to see the trunk yet. Let me pull some old leaf sheaths off, and you'll see that green is going to be striped.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not just the leaf sheath with color, we get this striping. So hopefully it'll be also kind of dramatic as it gets taller. We'll get to see more of the striping and the orange leaf sheath. So I don't know how well timed we are, but we've got a pistillate Caridoxa here, and we may be a little ahead. No, it's hard to say. I'm just going to start slapping this over it, and I'm actually just going to leave them here because I don't have my panel lens on me. It looks like it's not quite ready to go. No, we've definitely got flowers. It's dropping some flowers, so hopefully I can get at least out of all these hundreds and hundreds of inflorescences, get a few to stick. But I'm seeing some of the fallen flowers. You can see it's a different form. Anyway, I'm just gonna kind of leave that here for a while.
Yeah.
The lazy method of pollination. And hopefully we'll get some seed. It says worked before, and we'll do it again. So again, flushing with color. Color is great in palms. Doesn't happen all the time. But this is a great leaf flush. And some palms are famous for it. There's the red flag of New Caledonia, which is well known, Chamberonia. This is a whole different group. And this is a Calypter Calyx, which is a genus endemic to New Guinea. And this is Calypter Calyx albertianus. And, it doesn't get nearly as tall as the red flag. It'll only get to maybe the stem 8 feet max, maybe 6 feet. So it kind of has that understory feel. And again, very nice. Even though we got down some colder weather, about 46, it did fine. And it makes it proven itself to do very well. But it clearly loves that RO water, our reverse osmosis, very clean water we're using in this area, as well as our fog, which helps raise the humidity. So I think this is something that would scorch. Unlike Chamberoni, we could probably grow out in harsher condition. It likes it, but it's adapting and putting on a show in spite of the cold.
It's such a beautiful red plume. It's such a statement piece. How often does, like, how quickly does it harden off into the green leaf?
It stays red, I would say, for about 2 weeks, something like that. And then it kind of turns green. They kind of flop down. Then a few weeks later, you get another one. So it's just kind of this intermittent color in your jungle, which, so a really fun genus. It's got quite a few species. Some are clumping, some are singular. Probably has a lot more potential also to be used as an indoor houseplant because it's one of these lower light guys. And we found it to be a lot more tough and a lot more interesting as a genus, and just haven't seen many of them. So we're kind of into them at the moment. So here we have, again, a lot of fog. We were doing a lot of humidity. This is a little messy. We have some leaf drop, and it's a jungle after all. This one also has a nice kind of reddish flush, but it really has this nice long, elegant drip tip. And this is another Calypter Calyx. So this is from New Guinea. And this is Calypter Calyx Packy Stackies. And again, it has a nice red flush. There's actually quite a few forms of these. And this is one that has a little bit of mottling. So that actually is not deficiency.
Oh, interesting. I thought maybe it was something with the cold, but...
It could be, but in this case, it's not. And we have some that are almost pure green. This isn't deficiency, it's one of them are mottled. I'm really excited to hope to get more seed of this going, to get more mixtures of this, to see what colors we can get out. But I think this is a really fun plant that, again, it doesn't clump typically, but some of the clumpers can really fill in and last a long time. So, different ones. We've actually, in our plant sales, Calypter Calyx whole Brugii, we now have offered from seed we've produced here. And it's a clumper and actually seems tough and would be a good indoor house plant.
How often do you have your plant sales here? Because I'm sure people want to know when they're in the area or if they're in the area.
Well, we do 2 different ways. I mean, we do have an eBay sales that we do for small, specialized, more collector's plants. But when I talk about our standard plant sales, it's actually continuous. Our plant sales are online through our website. And it's either for pickup or delivery within about 15 miles. So we're not mailing these nursery plants. They're larger plants, probably more landscape plants people can grow here.
Got it.
People do come from out of the area, and we've had people come in actually for that Calypter Calyx who want it, and they will come pick it up. And it's available online. We have put new plants up every, typically Thursdays. We don't include pothos. Is at least just to take a quick glance. It's actually a nice Penanga, but of some of what I meant, if you look down here, of spines being formed from roots.
Oh, yeah.
So this is, again, many different ways palms make spines. We saw in Zambia, the leaf sheath. And right here, there's actually roots. And when they hit the ground, they will just turn right back into a root, but they're very sharp. And we have an Astrakarium, again, very spiny trunk, but this is epidermal. So this is after primary growth from the bud among the leaves, and it just holds them. But again, you see they can't continue growing like the roots. It's a different anatomy, different morphology, different homology, and it gets thicker as you go up. Just walking through. Probably just get another Chrysophila.
Yeah.
Those roots. The root spines can be especially aggressive.
Wow. It's funny that you plant them very close to the edge here.
Yeah, I try not to do that anymore, especially our climbing rattan palms, which have brutally sharp and really interesting spines as well. And we got to hide them way in the bushes because they just reach to climb and they will catch your face. So I'm going to climb in here for a moment, hopefully without ripping myself up. Do be careful.
I will.
And I'm going to look, at least we pulled this down. These are some of a true calamoid. This is a calamus. It's all the same plant kind of growing around here. I'm looking for a larger stem. This actually came to us as seed from, I believe it was New Guinea. Papua New Guinea. It was the forestry reserve. I don't know why they sent it. It's like 1960s. Unidentified Calamus, unidentified for decades. And then Scottsdale made an herbarium specimen. Later, a researcher looked at it at Kew. It ended up being described as a new species. And then later, a guy from New York came back to use DNA of it. So it's been here over 50 years. It took about 40 years for it to get identified. And we have to keep this a bit off the beaten track because of these.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
And this is just really, really sharp.
Wow.
This is called a flagellum. And what is bizarre is in a lot of other Calamus, and especially in the New World Desmoncus, which is another climbing calamoid, you have this on the tip of the leaf. So you can imagine the end of the leaf, you get all these little pinna, you have a long trailing thing that helps it climb. But here it's not. It actually comes off of the leaf sheath, which to me is just so bizarre, right? You'd expect that this, as we can see in other calamoids, that this would come off to help it climb, but actually it's coming right out of the leaf sheath.
Yeah.
That's a big factor in identification and everything else. But these are so sharp and they just grab and climb. We have to beat it back every once in a while. We love it. It's survived everything. It's been here since the 60s, but we got to keep it away.
Well, I'm just looking on the understory here, and it looks like you have quite a range of seedling palms down here. Is this like a fishtail, and you have this other one right here? Do they need tremendous amount of light in order to be able to grow up, or are they comfortable in like the understory like this, germinating and growing
Well, here
tall?
they are proving it.
Yeah.
This would be a weed that goes immediately. I love fishtails. There's maybe 10 or 12 species, but the common clumping one, urines, is really annoying. The other clumper, Monostachya, really well behaved, small, wonderful plant. But this I just already know is urines. Yeah, they can pop up intensely. If it gets real dark and you have too much leaf fall, it can usually kind of mulch them out. But if they're not getting too much leaf fall, some of these guys can sprout in very dark conditions, especially the beechias like this.
I smell cloves. Do you smell that? Cloves? The scent of cloves? What could that be? I don't know. It's very strong. Maybe it's just in the area that I was. It would have to be something that's, I would imagine, flowering or the fruit of something.
Yeah, but what can also happen is if you step on certain pipers, you can get
Oh.
you can get that. So I'm seeing some pipers around you, like right here. You're stepping on some.
Oh.
Let's see if this is it.
Close, yeah. That smells, it's a little sweeter than what I smell, but yeah,
I
that's,
think it.
yeah. Interesting.
That would be my best guess.
Yeah.
It's probably something you're stepping in. These pipers can release
I
it.
probably really stepped on one.
Sorry, another Calypter Calyx trying out, but this is a clumper.
LaQuala is a big group. Okay. So here we are in the rainforest. I had a question about LaQualas. LaQualas are really beautiful little fan palms. They got a lot of variation. Sort of Indo-Malaysian region. A lot of species. I think over 100 now, more being described. There are collectors who work now that just kind of throw a name on with the locality they collect at. They're not sure what they are. And we still don't have a good name on this plant. And we have a few. And this is the second generation of this LaQuala. The last one we had from the original seed import had died. But this came to us from Bogor Botanical Garden, I think in the late 60s. It was unidentified LaQuala. We've kind of left it un-ID'd. And yet it really performs well. And so we have it in here with the RO and the fog, but this predates it. But the moment we did that to it, it really started to grow faster. But this thing can actually put up with a lot of abuse. I think in South Florida, there's maybe 6 species that I think are the really tough ones. And this is one of them, but it has these very highly divided leaves, which gives it more of a graceful, more tropical, a little more like some of the very delicate Bornean plants, or New Guinea. It still has LaQualas. But anyway, this has been producing seed very well. We are producing a lot, and this is kind of our emblem at Fairchild, is LaQuala, and it's very much the divided LaQuala, which looks a lot like this. So sometimes you'll even see this in trade as the Fairchild LaQuala, which it's not. It's from Bogor Botanical Garden. We love them, and they sent us a really amazing seed a long time ago, and it's done very well for us. Unlike some LaQualas, which are very slow and tricky, and I think I got one right in here. My Dieffenbachias are
yeah.
taking off too much. And we're sort of experimenting with some outside, but it's looking green, it's coming. And you might think this looks more like a Johannesmania or one of the other groups, but this is a LaQuala. And this is LaQuala Saliana. And so it grows more upright with these narrow leaves.
Yeah.
And so this is something we could only have grown in the rare plant house before. But now with our different water and putting in for more fall, we're bringing them out. Keeping a little crowded, so it's a little protected, but I think I need to prune these up for next spring and hopefully get a nice LaQuala Saliana growing here. It's from the Malay Peninsula. And yeah, it's got sort of a nice shape form. It definitely kind of reminds more of the Joey palms, as they say, but it's actually LaQuala, kind of like a miniature.
So how tall would this one perhaps get as a specimen?
I think it's depending on lighting. I've seen photos where the leaves get maybe this tall, maybe 6 feet. But I think usually it's kind of in the 3 to 4 foot range.
Yep.
We can see it's a clumper, it's already clumping, so it's started developing mass. But totally hidden right here on the walkway among our rock solid Dieffenbachia.
Stay tuned here because we'll have more great houseplant home tours and field trips in the coming weeks. If you enjoy episodes like this, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell. That will let you know when another episode launches. And if you want to hear my newest podcast, Bad Seeds, head over to iHeartRadio. It's got plant-filled mystery, intrigue, conservation, and crime all wrapped into one. And if you dig it, download it and leave a review. That allows others to find it as well. Tipping the channel or becoming one of our illustrious sustaining members is always appreciated, as it allows us to reinvest into more great episodes like this. Additionally, you could check out our online houseplant materials and courses, including the 125 houseplant care spreadsheet, houseplant basics, troubleshoot your houseplants, and the Houseplant Masterclass. All of that can be found at homesteadbrooklyn.com or houseplantmasterclass.com. And don't forget that we have a new channel covering outdoor gardening, herbs, permaculture, agroforestry, and homesteading over at Flock Finger Lakes. We'll see you over there or on Plant One on Me next week.